It is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome the 6 founders of the Center for the Digital Nonprofit. Come on, everybody. In Lauren's opening remarks today, she touched on the fact that this has been a 1-year, really important journey. This is an opportunity to hear from these 6 leaders who made this possible. This work took a huge amount of effort on behalf of all the people involved. It was not a monetary commitment as much, or a technology commitment as much, as it was a commitment to wanting to improve the sector. So we're going to hear from each of you about what you saw and what you thought about and where we think we are today. Okay, and we're going to start with Jane Messick from Microsoft.
Hi.
And Aaron Baltefelter, who is the 2 founders. You guys were here last year, and you're 2 very different organizations. Tell us what it's like a year later to come here and be on this stage with this big crowd.
Right, so, well, it's a really awesome room. I can't see you all very well, but tell a little bit of a story. So we've been around NetHope now for 16 years. Microsoft, it's a platform company. We work across many, many missions with the idea that we can create impact across those many missions. And in the philanthropy sector, it's, how do we save refugees, save babies, save whales, save trees, save puppies? And as a platform company, to change, have impact across all those missions, we have to work with platform organizations, with collaborative organizations to do that. So we help the people that help people. So for 16 years, we've been working with NetHope, believing that we can collaborate to help you all that are so wicked smart about what you do, adopt technology to do more good. And I have to say that over those 16 years, you've worked really hard to get to the point you are to be tech-enabled, right? A lot of work has gone into that. And the tech sector, we've all done a lot of work to do our best to make our products more accessible to you. We try to make it easier to adopt, but that 10 years was well spent. But the CDN, when Lauren brought that to us, I was looking at that, I was like, that's really the next step. That's the accelerant we need to do for digital transformation, but to put the beneficiary on that clear path that we're trying to achieve when we adopt and use technology. So to me, that was super exciting about the CDN. How can we work with your individual mission to use technology to help your organization do more with technology, to be more efficient, but also support your beneficiaries better? But then how do we solve collective issues together? How do we share our solutions? How do we get greater scale in what we do to achieve more sustainable impact? So to me, the CDN was a great opportunity to really realize that potential and that promise we saw 16 years ago and accelerate the work that we do together.
So 16 years now, Okta is brand new, right? You're a new kid on the block in the Valley.
Yes, we are new. So Okta's just about to be 10 years old. Okta for Good is the social impact initiative that I lead, and that's about 2 years old. And our relationship with NetHope is about 2 years old as well. So for those that don't know, Okta, we're an identity management company, so we help organizations manage secure access to the cloud via identity, whether that's the identity of their employees, their partners, their beneficiaries, their volunteers logging in to get access to the apps they need. And we're also a Pledge 1% company. So a couple of years ago, Okta's founders took the 1% pledge and said, we are pledging our employees' time, our product, and our equity. In that case, we were pre-IPO to giving back. And so when we IPO'd last year, we had this really amazing opportunity to put that equity to good use. And NetHope was our very first grantee out of the Okta for Good Fund, very first grantee. We probably could have picked a more straightforward investment, to be totally honest, with our first grant. It's not as easy to explain NetHope and the center to our employees as it would be another investment. But we very, very quickly, when we met with Lauren, and by the way, Jim and I were talking last night, this was definitely an angel investment. I think the CDN was like a 7-slide deck and a meeting with Lauren that lasted an hour when we first were exposed to it. So it's come a long way, but it was very clear this was a clear problem that we believed in and we believed in solving. It was clear that NetHope was the right, was the right organization with the right leadership to solve it, and that we as a company were very interested in the problem and believed we had something to offer. And I would say a year later, looking back, I'm super happy to see the stage filled with so many wonderful, smart, inspiring peers that we ourselves have learned so much from. A year later, I would say the things that have for me that we've learned, because we are again new to this community, the collaboration is real, it's real, it's powerful, and it leads to really important things. I am very, very thankful for and proud of the kinds of conversations that we at Okta have had with Michael and Grant and their team at Oxfam. And Dawn and her team at Direct Relief, and Pietro and Mads at Norwegian Refugee Council over the last year, where we say we want to help, but we don't quite know how. And they have come to us with problems. And they've come to us with problems in some cases around our own technology and said, we need you to help us solve these things. And it's been a really, really candid and I think fruitful relationship with these organizations, and everything that we talk about has a benefit that's greater, a greater benefit to the sector. So that's been wonderful for us. And we've been just so privileged to be a part of this. So thank you for having us and letting us be a part of it.
Great.
Yep.
Jay, Blackbaud's been a market leader in nonprofit software. I think you're at 4 decades now. You guys have been at this. But you've also gone through a big transformation. So in some ways, you're old and new. And I think Lauren mentioned Mike Giannone, your CEO, gave a really inspiring podcast on being digital that we have in our Solution Center. What's it like? I mean, this whole idea of digital transformation, you've done it, you've walked the talk internally, and you're trying to do it with your customers now. Is it?
We have.
What's it like?
So I've been at Blackbaud for 15 years. And I feel like I'm at a different company today than I was just 5 years ago. So when we hear the words digital transformation, our minds tend to go to technology, which of course plays an important role. I would say that where our mind should go to is leadership. And when I say leadership, I mean CEO, executive director, starting at the top. That's the person that makes capital allocation decisions, investment decisions, and holds her staff accountable for change. And we've gone through this, as you mentioned, ourselves. So we have a CEO that joined about 4.5 years ago. If you go back 5 or 6 years, we had 200 systems spread across the company. Today we have four standard systems. And Mike, our CEO, he personally led this initiative. And I would say it's more than just the CEO exhibiting leadership. He also did a few other things that are important that I would say are important to all of you guys in the nonprofit industry too. Second thing that he did is he kept us focused on, of course, a long-range plan, but also short-term outcomes. And I'll give a kind of silly example that probably will surprise you. So we're a technology company. 6 years ago, when I filled out my expense report, I entered numbers in a spreadsheet, I printed it off, I taped my receipts to a piece of paper, and I stapled it, I handed it to my manager, who signed it, and then someone walked it over to the finance department. That was only 6 years ago. That's how we still did it. Within 90 days of Mike joining, that was completely automated. So that, by the way, got a lot of, let's just say, excitement about what could come from digital transformation. The other thing that he did is he made it very clear that while he was leading it, we were all accountable. So leaders across his organization were accountable for enacting the change, because you can't just delegate it to the IT department and say, okay, yeah, you guys go make this change happen. He delegated it to all of the leaders. So I run a division, and I have a monthly operating review, and one of the things we talk about is what are we doing on digital transformation. So that's kind of our history that I think is relevant for all of the nonprofit industry. And the other thing that I'd add that will bring us back to why I'm excited about working with NetHope is we didn't try to go figure it out ourselves. We went and visited other companies. Right? We learned from how they did it and the mistakes they made, the successes that they saw, and we learned from it. And that's actually one of the most exciting things about NetHope and the members of NetHope is both the desire to learn from each other, but also the ability, because the need is far greater than what we can all supply individually for the sector. And so if we're going to actually meet that need and do the good that we can as a sector, we're going to have to change. And that means best practices and learning from each other.
So Bri, I know you're from Box, and Box is a great product and it helps us network, but you yourself are the ultimate networker. I mean, you're a force of nature. So Lauren talked about this ecosystem today and building it up. I mean, from your vantage point of being at the center and an enabler of this network of impact cloud and all the things you're doing, what do you see through the CDN and where we're going?
Yeah, so the folks here on the panel have, among us, and then the Impact Cloud, which is another coalition that does a lot of work, hundreds of thousands of networks, right? Hundreds of thousands of sets of skills, hundreds of thousands of pathways to the capital that this room needs to do its work. And that's a lot more people and a lot more networks and a lot more strength than our 2,100 staff in our organization. And I think oftentimes building networks and helping those networks achieve full efficacy gets overcomplicated. And so I'd like to see a show of hands for those in the room who have people in this room that they implicitly trust and perhaps even love. Are there people in the room that have others in this room that they trust and love? Right? So as corny as that might sound, that trust and that love that you have is kind of what I feel like can be channeled and be mobilized as much as the highly sophisticated digital and technical and corporate KPIs and M&E reports and annual reports and so on. We do a lot of things to overcomplicate this, but really this room has a lot of people that love each other and a lot of people that trust each other. And I feel like the CDN is a mechanism through which we can channel that trust and love and the complex stuff most effectively between these hundreds of thousands of people with networks, heart, love, technology, and you all, the implementers. And frankly, I feel like it's a room like this with 512 friends that can affect the 4 million operating nonprofits and the hundreds of thousands of funding organizations in the world that are trying to do their work. And so really that's, for me, people call me networking, but it's all authentic, it's full heart. When I see Microsoft with 160,000 employees solving problems, and I have 1,900, but I know I can work together with them and we can cover one another's barriers and gaps, I'm sensing, I don't know if you feel this, but I'm sensing more receptivity for that magic that Dominic spoke about from Concern earlier, that magic of partnership unfold more than it ever has. And I think it's because we can, with the complex stuff, keep each other accountable. We can collaborate across geos and time zones, at the push of a button. But it's how can we channel that trust most effectively? And believe it or not, Jim and JL and Lauren and the others associated, they called me before the 7-slide deck came along, just because they know I love to stay in touch with everyone and get everybody together a lot. And I thought, if you can just keep this huge energy that I'm feeling in Silicon Valley and the other tech parts of the sector, if you can keep us organized and help us optimize the channel of that trust and love, then that's where we want to start to place our bets. And we didn't even set aside any capital at the IPO. So we literally, because of what you invest in our platform, we redirect 1% of that back into this work. And to arrive at, I don't have my badge on, I'd show you my little green thing that says that we're funding this, but in the end, it's you're helping us earn, as a social enterprise and a sustainable new generation philanthropy entity, the ability and the capital to reinvest in it, to help you then build capacity. So trust and love is why I really want to focus on this stuff.
Oh, that's so cool. We'll come back to that. So
okay.
By the time we close. So David, Oracle NetSuite is a large enterprise as well, but also it's not all Oracle. It's really a separate little entity. You met with us last year. You asked a lot of questions. What is this CD thing? I know you spent time with JL and myself, and here you are 1 year later on the stage, and you made some big announcements around how because of you're reimagining your offers. And what happened? What about this trust and love with your customers? What are you thinking about?
So I think for us, we've been running the social impact programs at NetSuite for a decade. And Oracle acquired NetSuite, and I think everybody was watching us and saying, I wonder what's going to actually happen. And so we're here 2 years later, and we've done some really kind of interesting things, and they're all around it's all the same dynamic of transformation. It's all how do you apply technology. We're an application company, right? We're doing financials, we're doing ERP. That's hard. So we knew that if we were going to give that out to the sector, from the smallest organization to the largest organization, we were going to need to actually help them use it effectively. And so we've spent a huge amount of our time figuring out how to do that effectively. So 10 years down the line, I've got 1,400 organizations. we could have been a lot bigger, but we wanted to make sure those organizations were actually using the technology effectively. And so our announcements are all around kind of how do we support that. So in the company, the entire company has gone to this kind of activation model where we go to all of our customers and we say, okay, if I ask you what you want and then you deliver it, that's a very complicated process. I've got 40,000 customers. I know how to do an AP process, or at least one that'll work. So if you use our AP process, we'll activate you, and that's much faster, cheaper. And again, when we talk about enterprise systems, it's all about, okay, if you adopt the process and the technology, it's much, much easier, cheaper, and faster than if you tell me what the process is and then I adopt the technology to the process. So what we liked about the CDN is in the social sector, we've identified nonprofit for NetSuite and for Oracle as one of 7 industries that we go to market in. That doesn't mean it's philanthropy on the side. That means there's a product team, there's a product manager. We evaluate that in the same way, which means we have to build applications and processes for the sector. The CDN is struggling with that, right? Because in this sector, we have not had great processes. Everybody buys fundraising, but nobody buys child sponsorship software, refugee processing software, kind of go down the list. It's all, and I'll use the word, somebody was teasing me earlier, we were counting the number of times bespoke was said, but we build bespoke software, right? And so for us, the CDN, the collaboration, the love, the whole environment is the process of figuring out what are those business processes that we can build applications around. Because I've been in the sector for 25 years, and you gotta kind of step up and be part of a community before you can be trusted to help a community. And I don't know what that is about the NGO sector, but it's there and it's very tangible.
So you can only change as fast as the speed of trust, right? Mm-hmm. And that's happening with the vendors. So it's really interesting. You're talking about different business models, and you spoke about combining professional services. And Pam, here's Avenade, right? You were one of the world's largest professional services firms, and you've just announced your initiative for social good. And how does that work? I mean, the old days it was land and expand, right? Sell the billable hours, get the people in there. Now we're talking digital transformation. It's a whole new world. Tell us what it looks like from Avenade and why you decided to get involved with the Center for the Digital Nonprofit.
Yeah, so first thing I'd like to say is thank you to Lauren and the team for welcoming Avenade into becoming a founding member. Hugely privileged and humbled to be here. And you're right. I mean, typically, we do a lot of work in the commercial sector with big enterprises where we're doing a lot of bespoke, unique systems for those clients. And in the short time that I've been working with the social sector, which is very short, it's quite clear that there are consistencies in terms of the challenges across the sector that many of the members are facing, and we heard a lot about that today. Around security, privacy, how to make sense of the data, so much data now, as well as you mentioned, David, the funding and the grants management systems, etc. Therefore, what we believe from an Avenade perspective is, we can work with the founding members to really help to deliver and create unique IP, which is relevant for the sector, as you've said, is scalable. We're a big global company. We operate in many countries. It's affordable, but most importantly, it's repeatable, right? It's transferable across the member organizations. And so, the exciting thing for us at Avenade, our employees, is actually to be part of the center, and to be able to bring our sort of significant digital innovation brain trust to really help to address the challenges that we've been hearing about this morning, and I'm certain we'll hear about through the week. Our employees are absolutely thrilled at the opportunity. They've responded incredibly positively as well, to not only have the opportunity to continue to develop their skills, but to do that knowing that the projects they're engaged in are going to have real human impact. Yeah, so we're really excited to be here. You know, this week for us is really about learning, I would say, really getting to understand the challenges, getting engaged, and starting to build the trust we obviously need to do.
And so this is a quick lightning round, and you're not prepped for this question, but you've heard this and you felt. I was a former NetHope member at Oxfam, and I was privileged to be on the board, and now I'm privileged to be working at the CDN. But this space, this group, what happens at the summit is pure gold. It's magic. It's that trust and love you talked about, Brian. So anything you've seen in the summit so far that you say, wow, that was really good, like that really was unexpected? I'm really privileged to be part of this.
Only half day in, right?
We don't. Anybody can die. No one has to answer, and we can walk off the stage, or somebody can say, "Oh yeah, we did this, and that was amazing."
So I'll do it at a different kind of historical perspective. So.
Oh God.
Sorry, it's been around for so long. It's so ugly. But there's an organization called CTCnet, and Jane remembers CTCnet, right? And it's a bunch of organizations.
I have a poster on my wall.
I know, exactly. And it was a bunch of organizations that came together, and there was another organization after that called N10. There's other organizations, and the communities go through this development process that yields the working groups we saw, that yields the presenters that are from your community talking to you, that yields the conversations that we see out there. And so I would say, it's not surprising to me because I've seen this before, but it's really inspiring to see a healthy community like that, right? Because very few of them are this healthy.
Right. I do want to say that one of the great things that has evolved is the give that happens within the community. Yes, we give funding to do this, and yes, there's a lot of give, but being the bespoke and how we're all trying to create technology and solutions that are relevant for this community, being able to listen to you all and learn from you all in the way you give in that way is super, super valuable. So then we can turn and hopefully give you things that are better and improve your mission. So I look at it, this is a give place to be, and it's always a highlight of the year.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Erin, you first.
I would just add, we had to build off of these points, we had a breakfast this morning all about digital skills. It was hosted by Impact Cloud, and we invited members and attendees to just come and sit with us in small groups and bring to life some of what Lauren shared in terms of this research that just came out. So research is great, and all of the work that NetHope has done around the digital nonprofitability research, the digital nonprofit skills research is super strong. And we also know that until we more deeply understand the challenges beyond the research, we're not going to be able to figure out how to help. And so what we did this morning, what I saw this morning, was a bunch of folks who were willing to sit down and bring to life what that research said and say, here's how it looks in my organization. I work in the field and my colleague works at headquarters, and here's how we take the same results and data and we look at it totally differently. That kind of candor and that kind of openness is so valuable for us, and we, unfortunately, it's really hard to get when you're not here. Mm-hmm. And so just to echo again what Jane said, this is a really special week, and we're thrilled to be here, and I think just more of that, there's not enough information that you can share with us this week. So I really encourage everybody to continue to do that and to bring these challenges to life for us.
Want to bring it home, Bri?
Just unless Jay has.
Well, what I was going to say is I was not at all surprised at the feeling of collaboration and curiosity that I felt. The part that surprised me a little bit is how much curiosity and collaboration happened after 9 p.m. at the bar last night. Kept going, I think, all night.
Yeah.
Right. Far later than I stayed up.
I was just going to say two quick things. One is when you 4 or 5 years ago came to this event and shook hands with everybody when I met them, and I think it's about 80% I've hugged when I've seen them. When I see him back there like beaming. So I hugged her so hard she almost lost her breath for a moment. But it was like it's a hug group, and I think that means a whole heck of a lot. And when Jim and JL were telling me about the CDN, and I didn't have any corporate foundation to pull from financially, and I was literally asking our executives one by one on their mobile phones for between $2,000 and $5,000. to send those over to the first $21,500 earned literally by phone calls to leaders, director and higher at the company to get it going. It was pretty obvious for me I was going to roll my sleeves up and figure out how to be a part of it. So again, handshakes to hugs is key. And then I'll wrap by saying that Justin from Microsoft and I, certainly there are times that Microsoft and Box compete pretty heavily in the industry, but he and I were absolutely elevating community above competition last night at that dinner and spent 2 hours catching up and building a lot of trust. So that's all meant a lot, I think, to me so far. Yeah.
So with that, it's a wrap. I want to say thank you so much because we walk together, right? As Dominic said today, it's not you, it's not us, it's us together.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Let's
Jim.
hear it for the
Thanks.
CDN founders. Good job, man. Good hugs. All right. All right.
It's going to take just a second while we reset for the next group, so please don't go very far if you go at all. And I was told I was supposed to share something, but I don't have a heck of a lot that I didn't already share this morning. Thank you for sticking around for the group photo. I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to look massive, and thank you all for being good sports about that. Are there any questions or inquiries that we could address about the schedule or what's going on today or tomorrow that might be helpful? You all just had a break, really, folks. Somebody accused me yesterday of being too maternal, like I'm treating you all like you aren't behaving, and I apologize for that. But if you'd behave, it'd be a lot easier. We have a great panel coming up, and they are getting their mics on right now. Okay. Sure you don't need 5? You don't need 5?
Nope.
Okay.
Not according to Frank.
Okay. I was told that lunch is going to be a little bit different today. Rather than the bagged lunch, it's going to be platters of sandwiches on the tables. So go find a table with meet some new friends, and then they will be bringing soup around to you. So it'll be a little more of a sit down, but still fairly casual today. So I think we're just about ready. The moderator is getting mic'd now. Any announcements, Frederick? What if I started introducing Frank right now before, as you guys get your last person mic'd? If you were here yesterday, you heard Lauren introduce Frank Scott, who's been with NetHope for many, many years and who has been the Managing Director of Programs and is now taking on a new role as the Managing Director for New Program Development. So Frank has a lot of history in the sector, a lot of history at NetHope, and we're really grateful that he is here this morning to moderate this panel. So Frank, if you and your folks are ready, I'll invite you up on stage.
Well, thanks, Laura. That was an informal networking opportunity. I hope you got a chance to chat with your seatmates. I have the distinct pleasure of being up on the stage today with three organizations that devote considerable resources to international development. We have two agencies that are primarily funders, Sida and DFID, and one that is a $3 billion a year implementer in JTZ. So I'd like to ask you to each introduce yourself. Let's start with Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us here today. My name's Lauren Kahn. I'm from Department for International Development, DFID, in the UK, and I head up digital policy and programs. And that involves responsibility for delivering DFID's digital strategy for doing development in a digital world. And basically, our digital strategy commits us to making greater and better use of digital technology to deliver on the mission we already set out to do, which is tackling global poverty, delivering on the global goals, and ensuring that no one is left behind in a digital world. And I oversee a central digital team tasked with building capability, setting direction on emerging digital policy, doing digital demonstrators to inspire staff, and building collaborations and partnerships with organizations such as yourself.
That's great. And Kirsten, could you talk a little bit about your background and Sida?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Kirsten Johnson-Cissi, and I work at Sida, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, where I'm in charge of a unit working with a global strategy for sustainable economic development. And it holds a number of result areas: trade, inclusive growth, private sector development, food security, migration, and of course also including ICT and digital, and innovative work. And my background is actually in forestry and rural development. And what is especially interesting for me to be here and talk about digital and ICT is that I'm interested to get this useful for the economic actors like farmers, women and men in the developing countries.
Thank you. I realized, Dirk, when I introduced you, I said JTZ. That dates me. Introduce yourself and by the proper name.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, we used to be GTZ and two other organizations after fusion a couple of years ago. Now we are GIZ. And GIZ is a kind of a strange animal, maybe. It's quite unique, because GIZ is a private company, but not for profit, and 100% state-owned by the German government. We implement development aid, development projects, international cooperation projects for the German government on a commissioning basis. So we have to sell our projects, and we are co-funded by a lot of other donors like DFID or Sida. For example, GIZ is quite huge. We are working in more than 120 countries, have a staff of about 22,000 people worldwide, and a turnover of about 3 billion.
Great, thank you.
Maybe just who I am. I'm heading one of our departments. So apart from the HR department, financial department, etc., we have, let's say, 5 core departments. 4 are operations, operations in the globally or in certain regions of the world, and 1 department, we call it Sectoral department. I'm heading this department. It's kind of an internal think tank where we develop new projects, where we do our knowledge management, our innovation management.
Great. I learned a lot from you, all of you, when we were preparing for the panel, and when I asked, how your digital strategies work vis-a-vis your international development objectives. You all started describing a journey you've been on. So would you each like to share a little bit about the journey and kind of where you've been and where you are today vis-a-vis digital strategies and how it's built into your international development objectives? Dirk, let's start with you.
Yeah, okay. Well, we are a German company, and well, I'm allowed to say it. Sometimes the Germans are not the fastest. So we started maybe a bit late with a systematic analysis of digitization and what does it mean for GIZ. Maybe with the Arab Spring, we started to have a more systematic view on, in this case, social media and the influence, the impact of social media and digital transformation as a whole. And then in 2014, DFID, Sida, they were much more faster than us. But then in 2015, we developed our first digital strategy. I have to admit, quite a generic one. But now, during the last years, and then again, we are a German company. When we take a decision, then we go straight forward with all our power we have. So we developed, reviewed the strategy, and now we have a new strategy that is strongly aligned to our corporate strategy. So it's really included in the corporate strategy. And now, we are doing a lot of things now. We have a new department on, it's called Digits, Digital Solutions and IT. It's more with a focus on internal processes. We have defined 8 dimensions in which we would like to work and to improve. So internal processes like the others as well, and of course in our projects. And therefore, we have a new competence center on digital solutions, digital society. We are working with a lot of labs. We grew substantially in our projects. More than 250 projects are kind of digital projects where we implement digital solutions from an app up to digital ecosystems, creation of digital ecosystems in a country. So, it took some time, but now we are strongly on the way and dealing with all digital challenges we face.
Good. Kirsten, can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, to link up to what Dirk just said, Sida started a long time ago with ICT and research cooperation. That was one of the startup for working with ICT in development. But the journey has been long, and as of today, we do not have a digital strategy, but we believe in kind of mainstreaming digital into all our projects and programs and all our activities. We have strong support in the Sida vision, and we also have bilateral, regional, global strategies where ICT, digital, and innovation is clearly spelled out, as well as in our instructions from the government. So we continue the journey, and we are happy to be here to exchange with our other partners also and share the challenges.
Lauren, you have your own journey. Tell us about that.
Yes, and I think a bit of combination of both of these journeys involved. I think in about 2012, DFID had its first digital strategy. That was driven by the centre of UK government, which was having a huge drive for digital transformation of government public services. And that led to DFID developing a digital strategy focused very much around internal systems and processes, because we don't do a lot of the external delivery of our programs ourselves. We work through implementers. So I came into DFID about 3 years ago and started to push the aspiration further that now we've embedded in mainstream digital into the way we're starting to work internally. How might we start embedding standards and principles into our programs, the way that we're delivering to our beneficiaries, thinking much more about value for money of digital programs, scale and sustainability, which have all been challenges for us. And then finally also pushing ourselves to think about broader DFID strategy and policy and thinking around what working in a digital world actually means in terms of inclusive development, thinking very much around messages of leaving no one behind in a digital world, as well as safeguarding and warning against emerging risks in a digital world. And over time, I think we're seeing that real shift moving not just from the sector verticals, but focusing on what are these cross-cutting enablers, how do we work at the country level to support thriving local digital ecosystems that are inclusive. And I think there are pros and cons of having a digital strategy, but for us right now, I think being able to call it out and making it an outspoken objective of the organization, having a digital team is useful, but our aspiration is that one day we won't need a digital strategy, it will just be part of the business strategy, and perhaps my team won't be needed either.
Yeah, well, in NetHope fashion, yesterday with a smaller group of people who really know each other, we had what we call a fail fest, where we talk about the things that haven't worked. Maybe you don't have to talk about your failures, but what have been some of your challenges along the way, and maybe what do you see as the challenges today? And Lauren, do you want to take that first?
Okay, I think the starting point is probably about de-siloing digital. I think there's been a tendency within the organization to think that digital is the domain of the digital team, and actually this agenda that Kirsten was talking to, how do we actually mainstream digital and create co-ownership of this agenda across the whole quite distributed organization with a country presence in multiple parts of the world. So that's been one of the key things. Then I also think breaking out of sector silos and bringing technology and sectoral communities together and transferring digital lesson learning across the different sectors. I think the second key area that we also have seen as a real challenge is pushing from pilot to scale. And I think there's been a tendency in the past for us to be chasing after the next shiny piece of technology rather than focusing on proven technology and thinking, how can we now scale this? And I think that pushes us away from being technology experts and into the domain of business models that are inclusive, the right policy and regulatory environment, focusing on inclusion and skills. So that's been a few of the challenging areas. And then just finally on an internal piece, I think this isn't an agenda that you can tick a box and be done. It really is about human capacity building and people, and that involves cultural change. And that is not something that can be done quickly, particularly in a big bureaucracy. So focusing on people and that transformation of culture has been an area of priority, but also challenge for us.
Kirsten, does any of that resonate with you, or do you have anything new to add?
Well, I think it definitely resonates. We also struggle with, we have the aim to work for, to diminish the poverty, although we need to work with our internal competencies and capacities, and we still lack digital skills and knowledge in our organization. That is a challenge. And also as you mentioned, the behavior, and we have so many, sometimes it's like, well, not another digital add-on. We need to include environment and gender and conflict and now another thing. So I feel like sometimes it feels like, well, digital is what's happening while we are busy making other plans. So, well, we have recognized that even if we have gone for the mainstreaming strategy, it's difficult. It asks for a lot of competence and capacity, and one solution we have found in Sida is to work in networks. We don't have the capacity so far to have an exclusive ICT unit, but we have worked with networks, and also we try to add the digital skill onto our help desks. For example, the gender help desks also need to be able to advise us on digital and gender, or digital and environment. And that's the way that we want to move forward.
Yeah, I think building on a couple of your points, it probably resonates with every NGO here in the room about breaking down silos. They have their own set of silos to break down, and certainly your point about working with networks to accomplish more, as opposed to trying to build the competencies all in-house, all on your own. Dirk, maybe a two-part question for you. Maybe talk about the challenges you see, and then also what's most...
I guess in a very similar situation, and having in mind the 20,000 people working for GIZ, mainstreaming is of course a huge challenge, and we invest a lot of money in developing the skills of our people. And we have those special units, special labs, where we try to go forward with the issues and cross-sectoral approaches, etc., etc. So, but that's not enough, and therefore we are also working in networks with others, especially with the impact hubs that are existing around the world. Work together with startups, with huge companies and other stakeholders, of course. However, I think we are still in the beginning. We are all are still in the beginning, and till now, to be frank, I guess we don't know exactly what works and what doesn't. Of course, all of us made our experiences with an IP, an approach there, or whatever. But we are not in the situation to say, okay, that's working and that's not working. What's working, for example, is we are working with artificial intelligence on the detection of crop diseases. Okay, it's a tool. It's working quite well, and we can use the tool in other countries. Okay, we are working with blockchain technologies in decentralization projects. That's working as well. Smart farming, another aspect. But in my opinion, there's still a lack of scaling. You mentioned it as well, and we are not doing digitization, of course, as an end itself. It's for increasing impact, for improving the people's living condition. And the link between digitization and living conditions impact it's not yet clear. It's it.
Kirsten, what's most promising to you in terms of what your outlook is for the next year or two?
Well, I think that we need, to continue on the same line, the integration of digital in our work. We used to have quite a strong position on ICT and democracy and freedom of speech work, and we want to continue with that and build our capacity. And we have, what is promising and what we are happy to say is that we have a strong support from the top management at Sida, and this is combined with this sense of urgency that we need to do something and we need to do it good. Another thing that I think is promising, that is this interaction and dialogue, and this happening, for example, to be present here is promising, and it's also there are a number of conferences and ICT digital conferences, and I take the opportunity to mention Stockholm Internet Forum that we are planning to arrange next year. We have done it for a couple of years, or a number of years, I would say, and we have the Stockholm Internet Forum in May next year, and we will definitely be talking about shrinking space in from different angles. So that's promising.
Good, Lauren?
I think we're sort of looking at the promising areas as somewhat of an experiment, because I think everything is emerging as we engage with it. I think we're sort of looking at it almost in a matrix style. We're looking at a few sectors where we think there is real game-changing potential to harness digital. And I think particularly looking at agriculture, education, and health, where we think there's significant opportunity, but also a lot of work to be done to make systemic changes in these sectors to really sort of harness the opportunity of digital. And then we're also looking at some horizontal cross-cutting enablers, which we see as really high potential ways to support thriving digital economies and societies. And those areas include digital access, digital identity systems, data ecosystems, and digital finance, which are all platforms that we think in country a lot of innovation can actually build on top of in terms of a whole range of sectors. So I think increasingly we're trying to look at that platform opportunity that digital offers, and how do we create a platform that all of our sectoral innovations can start to build upon.
So we have a few minutes left. We have an audience that's pretty much all converted. Their organizations may not all be converted, but they're converted. About probably 65% of the people in the room work for NGOs, roughly 35% work for large and small technology companies. Do you have any kind of closing remarks, closing advice to either or both of those audiences? Maybe to the NGOs, what would DFID and Sida say in terms of how to approach your organization and work with your organization so that you can kind of mutually learn together and maybe take advantage of the things we've learned and not make as many of the same mistakes and do more in the future? Lauren?
I mean, the first thing I'd say is digital transformation is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. So I think not seeing this as a competition or a race that any of us are going to get ahead in, I think that the real opportunity here is to be collaborating. We've tried out all sorts of different ways of building capability within our organization that we'd like to share. And we're starting to really see donors and partner implementers and delivery partners all starting to converge around common principles and standards for what good digital development looks like. And I think the more we can be having a conversation and speaking the same language, the more we can move this agenda forward together.
Kirsten, what would you say?
Well, I would say that, if we ensure a truly inclusive digital development with the objective still to leave no one offline, and we try to close the gap between men and women, and we also dare to have an open discussion about to mitigate risks and see the pros and cons from the digital development. Then at the end of the day, maybe we could say that we plan for the digital rather than just see it happen.
Dirk, any thoughts on for the NGOs in the room or the tech companies?
Yeah, maybe 3 points. First of all, try to avoid inventing the wheel again and again. We are all, at the moment, we're still in an experimental phase, I would say, not only we in the international organizations, but NGOs, companies as well. And therefore, those kinds of networks like NetHope or other platforms are extremely important to change the experience of to share the experiences. Second, look for local solutions in the countries. Very often we have seen the perfect solution coming from Europe or the States or from industrialized countries, but unfortunately it doesn't work. So look for solutions in the partner countries. And by doing that, it's my third point, have in mind the scaling up of the approaches. We have a lot of ideas, a lot of innovation in the world, but we still face or see a lack of scaling. And so put scaling in the middle, scaling for impact, of course, in the middle of your concerns. And maybe finally, one last point. I think we, between all of us, we should think more about data and how to use data and who is able to use or get access to data. Very often we face a lack of access to data because the data or the owner of the data are private companies. And I think we need to find a new way of share data without damaging your business, of course, of the companies, but for more public services. And there, I guess we need kind of, as it is already mentioned in the digital principles, we need to think about how to use data in an open but secure way. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think one of the things we have several organizations in this room, mostly the tech companies, who measure themselves a bit by market share. International development is not a market share business. I think that's pretty clear. There's lots of work to go around, and I think even the organizations like DFID and Sida and JIZ would say we can't solve it all ourselves. And so the message keeps coming through around networking, and I'd be remiss not to mention the reason you're here today is because you're part of a 2-day effort with our colleagues at Dial, another network that's trying to come together and get the donors working together around international development principles. And so I think these networks and these mini networks and the conversations that are taking place here, it's quite an exciting time. So I'd like to thank our panelists, and I think we're up for lunch. Is that what we're doing? So am I adjourning? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was really good.
Thanks.
So as you walk out, there's lunch out there. Breakout sessions start around 1 o'clock. We do